what the Spirit means, not what the Spirit says, but what the Spirit means. They're not accusing each other of not believing in Jesus. Oh, you got it wrong. Oh, you can't be a believer if you don't believe this. If you're a Christ follower, and the person you're in conflict with is a Christ follower, you should be able to disagree agreeably. Of course, the way to get to that is not generally the mindset that I'm in when I'm disagreeing with somebody. I don't know about you, but I want to be right. I like it when I get my way. You guys like that? You like it your way? I like it when I get my way. I've even wanted to be right at the expense of another person, the expense of their feelings. I wanted to be right more than I wanted to be righteous. There's a big difference there. Being right doesn't mean being righteous. In other words, at times I am guilty of wanting to win an argument, which is more about me feeling good, than I am wanting to reflect the love of Jesus and helping them feel good. Sometimes I'm like that. You might be too. Paul talks about this, about the way to do this, writing the church in Ephesus. This is Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. Now, when Paul's writing this letter, he's in Rome. It's a little further down the road than we've been in Acts so far. He's in Rome, he's in prison, and he's writing to the church in Ephesus. He says, as a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. A worthy life. A life that reflects being part of the church. He says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. I want you to underline verse 2. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Underline that. Or not, whatever. If the question is, how can I be agreeable with that jerk? Step one, stop calling people names. Humility, gentleness, and patience are the answers. And it's interesting to me because where I am with the Lord working in my life now, because my life has substantially changed fairly recently. I have had people in my house who are very stubborn. You might recognize my son Chris. Or his mom. Huh? If you're going to heckle me louder. You, he said, yeah, I'm a little stubborn. But I will tell you, in my daughter Abigail, I have met someone whose stubbornness rivals my own. Possibly exceeds it, but I refuse to admit that fully. And when she's locked in on something, you might not believe this, but she is not impressed with me or my opinion. And as you can imagine, that has caused some consternation between us, between Sarah and I. It's a learning curve, and I have been severely behind. So in the year that we've lived together, Sarah and I's anniversary is in a week or so. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? You can clap. I like Sarah. Clap for my wife. In the year that we've lived together, I have learned, I've remembered, and I'm continuing to learn lessons in gentleness, patience, and humility. We're also told to make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. The good news there is we're not told to make unity. We're told to keep it. Through the bond of peace. That's what Jesus bought for us at the cross. That word that says make every effort can also be translated zealously protect. Hold on to that. That's gold. Jesus is the one that tears down the barriers. When we're celebrating the Lord's table this morning, we're reminded of what it took God himself to make that peace, to tear down those barriers. We need to remember to whom we belong, whose we are, and that's Jesus. And we're called to live in a way that points to him and not to us. So when I want to be right, that's all about me. He draws us towards himself, and when he does that, he draws us toward one another as well. So in order to disagree agreeably, we have to remember whose we are. The next thing is that in addition to remembering whose we are, we need to remember that we exist to bless and to build up one another. To bless and to build up one another. It is so easy to get wrapped around axles, to get distracted by things that aren't important. It's easy, especially when I want what I want. Gentleness, humility, and patience are needed in order to fulfill our purpose as a people. We exist to bless and to build one another up. The word that is translated church means an assembly. That's how that word's defined. But literally, it's made up of two words that means called out. We're called out. We're called out from sin. We're called out from death, eternal separation from God. We're called out from our bondages, but we're also called into something. We're called into a community of believers whose head is Christ. We become part of the people of God. We become his family. One of my favorite verses in the Bible says God sets the lonely in families. He calls us together. As members of God's family, we exist to build, to bless, and to build one another up. So how do we do that? Well, we disagree. We already talked about no name calling. That just doesn't help, believe it or not. Paul says it like this to the church in Ephesus. He says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen.